The laughter came first. It rippled through the wedding tent like poison spreading through water. Quiet at first, then impossible to ignore. Adiz Nwosu stood frozen near the gift table. Her fingers still wrapped around the champagne flute she'd been holding for the past 10 minutes without drinking. Her cousin Ngozi had just announced her engagement. The third cousin this year. And now every eye in the tent had found its way to Adiz. The unmarried one. The pitiful one. The one who would die alone with her bread and her butter and her foolish dreams. She felt her smile crack at the edges. Felt her dignity splinter. Then she heard it. The unmistakable sound of gravel crunching beneath expensive tires. A black Rolls-Royce Phantom glided to a stop outside the tent. The door opened, and the man who stepped out walked directly toward her. His gaze cutting through the crowd like a blade. He stopped inches from her face. And in the sudden, deafening silence, he spoke one word. Darling. No one moved. No one breathed. Because no one, not a single soul in that tent, could understand how a woman they pitied could possibly know one of Korea's most powerful billionaires. But the real question wasn't why Cha Hyun-woo had called her darling. It was this: what secret existed between the woman everyone laughed at and the Korean billionaire who looked at her as though losing her once had nearly destroyed him. If you enjoy emotional billionaire romance stories filled with shocking twists and unforgettable love stories, don't forget to subscribe. Now, let's uncover how it all began. The morning had started with promise. Adiz had woken early, as she always did, to the familiar sounds of Lagos stirring to life outside her window. The bread she'd baked the night before sat cooling on the rack in her small kitchen. The icing for her aunt's wedding cake waited in the refrigerator. Everything was prepared. Everything was perfect. She had told herself this day would be different. She had told herself she would smile through the whispers, laugh at the jokes about her unmarried status, and leave before anyone could corner her with questions about why she hadn't found a husband yet. 30 years old. Successful bakery owner. No ring. No prospects. No children. In her family's eyes, she might as well have been invisible. You're wearing that? Her mother's voice cut through the quiet of her bedroom. Adiz turned from the mirror, still holding the modest Ankara dress she'd chosen. What's wrong with it? Her mother, Chidinma Nwosu, stood in the doorway with arms crossed and disappointment already settling into the lines of her face. It's not that anything is wrong with it. Chidinma moved into the room, her wrapper rustling with each step. It's that nothing is right with it. You're going to your cousin's traditional wedding. There will be young men there, eligible men, and you want to dress like you're going to buy tomatoes at the market. Adiz set the dress on the bed. Mama, I'm going to support Ngozi, not to find a husband. And that, her mother said, pointing a finger, is exactly your problem. You think life will wait for you. You think opportunities will keep appearing. But they won't, Adiz. They won't. The words landed like stones against her chest. She had heard variations of this speech for years now. Since she turned 25 and the questions began. Since she turned 28 and the questions became demands. Since she turned 30 and the demands became funeral dirges for the grandchildren her mother believed she would never hold. I have a business to run, Adiz said quietly. I have a life alone. Chidinma's voice softened, but the sharpness remained in her eyes. Your aunties will be there today. Your grandmother. Everyone who watched you grow up. Everyone who asks me, Chidinma, when will Adiz settle down? When will she give us reason to celebrate? What do you want me to tell them? Adiz looked at her mother, at the woman who had raised her with love and expectations in equal measure, at the woman who had never understood why her daughter chose flour and sugar over finding a man who could provide, at the woman who saw independence as a phase rather than a choice. Tell them I'm happy. Her mother laughed. A short, bitter sound. Happiness doesn't keep you warm at night, Ada. Happiness doesn't give you children to care for you when you're old. Happiness doesn't stop people from talking. She left without another word. And Adiz stood alone in her room, wondering why her happiness had never been enough. The wedding tent had been erected in her uncle's compound in Victoria Island. By the time Adiz arrived, it was already filled with relatives she barely recognized, neighbors who remembered her as a child, and young women her age who had done the expected thing. Married, produced children, secured their place in the family hierarchy. She spotted Ngozi immediately. Her cousin stood near the entrance, resplendent in traditional bridal attire, surrounded by friends who laughed and fussed over her beaded accessories. Ngozi was 26, 4 years younger than Adiz, and yet, somehow, she had managed to accomplish what Adiz could not. Adiz! Ngozi's smile was genuine as she broke away from her entourage. You came. I was worried you would find some excuse about the bakery. And miss your special day? Adiz embraced her cousin, breathing in the scent of expensive perfume and bridal excitement. I wouldn't dream of it. The cake looks amazing, by the way. Ngozi pulled back, her eyes bright. Everyone's been asking who made it. I told them my famous cousin. Famous is generous. You're too modest. Ngozi squeezed her hands. But please enjoy yourself today. Eat, drink, dance. Maybe find a nice young man too. Ngozi. I'm just saying. Her cousin laughed and returned to her friends, leaving Adiz standing alone once more. She found a quiet corner near the gift table. The celebration swirled around her. Music, laughter, the clink of glasses, but she remained apart, watching, observing, wondering why she felt like a stranger at gatherings that should have felt like home. Is that Adiz? The voice came from her left. She turned to find her auntie Obiageli approaching, trailed by two other aunties whose names Adiz couldn't immediately recall. All three wore expensive lace and gold jewelry. All three wore expressions of exaggerated concern. It is you. Auntie Obiageli grasped Adiz's shoulders and studied her face with uncomfortable intensity. Look how thin you've become. Are you eating? Are you sleeping? I'm fine, Auntie. She says she's fine. Obiageli glanced at her companions. That's what they always say before something terrible happens. I'm truly fine. And how is the bakery? The question came from the second auntie, a woman Adiz now recognized as her mother's cousin from Enugu. Business is good. We expanded last year. Added a second location in Ikoyi. That's nice. The woman's tone suggested it was anything but. But tell me, Ada, all the success with bread and cake, does it keep you company at night? Adiz's smile tightened. I have friends. Family. Friends and family are not the same as a husband. Auntie Obiageli lowered her voice as if sharing a terrible secret. You know your mother worries. We all worry. 30 years old and still unmarried. What will people think? People will think whatever they choose to think. Ah, this modern attitude. The third auntie clicked her tongue. This is what happens when women focus on business instead of building homes. Pride before wisdom. Adiz felt her composure beginning to crack. I should go check on the cake. The cake can wait. Obiageli's grip on her arm tightened. Listen to me, Ada. I know you think you're being strong, independent, but strength without direction leads nowhere. You're not getting younger. The men who might have married you 10 years ago are married now. The ones who remain. She trailed off meaningfully. The ones who remain are looking for younger women, the Enugu auntie finished. Women who can still give them many children. Adiz pulled her arm free. Excuse me. She moved through the crowd blindly, her vision blurring at the edges. She could feel their eyes following her, could hear the whispers rising in her wake, could sense the pity radiating from every corner of the tent. She found refuge near a pillar at the far end of the tent. Her hands were shaking. Her breath came in short, controlled bursts. She had survived these conversations before, had smiled through them, laughed at herself before anyone else could, pretended that the words didn't cut. But something about today felt different. Something about standing alone at another wedding, watching another cousin begin a journey she might never take, made the wound feel fresh. Are you all right? A young man appeared beside her. He was handsome in an ordinary way, medium height, pleasant features, the confident bearing of someone accustomed to attention. I'm fine. Thank you. I'm Emeka. He extended his hand. Ngozi's husband's cousin. Adiz. She accepted the handshake briefly. I know. His smile widened. You're the baker everyone's talking about. Talking about? Your cake is incredible. And you're... He gestured vaguely toward her. Well, not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone older, maybe. Someone less. He searched for the word. Beautiful. Under different circumstances, Adiz might have appreciated the compliment, might have allowed herself to enjoy the attention of a man who seemed genuinely interested. But she could see her aunties watching from across the tent, could see their hope and their judgment all tangled together. Thank you for saying so. Listen, I don't usually do this, but... Emeka stepped closer. Could I maybe get your number? Take you to dinner sometime? I'm not. Attention, everyone. The DJ's voice boomed through the speakers, cutting off her response. It's time for the bride to thank her guests. Where are all the single ladies? Let's gather around and give Ngozi your blessings. Adiz's heart sank. She knew what came next. The parade of unmarried women. The speculation about who would be next. The performative joy that always felt like a reminder of failure. Go on. Auntie Obiageli appeared at her elbow, guiding her toward the center of the tent. Stand where everyone can see you. Auntie, please. Don't embarrass me, Ada. She found herself pushed into a circle of young women, all of them beaming with anticipation. Ngozi stood at the center, radiant, holding the microphone the DJ had given her. I want to thank all my single sisters for being here today, Ngozi said, her voice warm. I know the journey to love isn't easy, but I believe with all my heart that each of you will find what I've found. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. But I want to especially acknowledge someone. Ngozi's eyes found Adiz. My cousin Ada, who made this beautiful cake we're all enjoying. Ada, come forward. No, please no. But Adiz was already being pushed forward by hands she couldn't see. She stumbled into the center of the circle, face burning, smile frozen. Ada has been an inspiration to all of us, Ngozi continued. A successful businesswoman, independent, strong. The pause lasted half a second too long. But I know that deep down, she wants what we all want. Love, family, partner to share life with. Adiz heard the pity in her cousin's voice, saw it reflected in the faces surrounding her. So let's all pray for Ada, Ngozi concluded, that her own blessing comes soon. Amen. The word echoed from 100 mouths. And in that moment, Adiz felt smaller than she had ever felt in her entire life. The laughter started somewhere to her right. Not cruel laughter, not exactly, but the kind of laughter that emerges when something uncomfortable happens and people don't know how else to respond. The kind of laughter that says, we're not laughing at you, we're just... But they were. They were all laughing at her. 30 years old, someone murmured nearby. Still waiting. She should have been more flexible, another voice added. Too focused on that bakery. Her mother tried to introduce her to several good men. She rejected them all. Pride. That's what it is. Pride before wisdom. Adiz stood perfectly still. Her smile remained fixed in place. But behind her eyes, something was breaking apart. The crowd began to disperse, returning to their tables and their champagne and their celebration. Ngozi was swept away by her new in-laws. The DJ resumed playing music. Life continued as if nothing had happened. As if Adiz hadn't just been publicly mourned like a woman already dead. She found herself drifting back toward the gift table. Found herself picking up a champagne flute. Because her hands needed something to hold. Found herself staring at a fixed point in the distance because if she looked at anyone at all, she would cry. And she would not cry. Not here. Not in front of them. Poor thing. The voice drifted from somewhere behind her. Maybe if she lost some weight. Or smiled more. You can't force a man to want you. It's a market and clearly no one is buying. Adiz's fingers tightened around the champagne flute. She felt her auntie's eyes burning into her back. Felt her mother's disappointment radiating from across the tent. Felt the weight of 30 years of expectations crushing her chest until she could barely breathe. And then, the sound of gravel. Quiet at first, then impossible to ignore. Conversations faltered. Heads turned toward the compound entrance. A black Rolls-Royce Phantom had glided to a stop just outside the tent. The windows were tinted so dark that nothing of the interior was visible. The engine was silent. The doors remained closed for a moment that stretched into eternity. Whose car is that? Do we know anyone who drives a Rolls-Royce? Maybe it's for the groom's family? The driver's door opened. A man in a formal black suit emerged. clearly a driver or bodyguard. He moved with military precision to the rear passenger door and opened it with a slight bow. The man who stepped out stilled the entire compound. He was tall, over 6 feet, with the kind of presence that demanded attention without asking for it. His suit was impeccably tailored, dark charcoal that caught the Lagos sunlight like liquid shadow. His face was striking in its stillness, sharp jawline, calm observant eyes, features that betrayed nothing of his thoughts. Korean. The word rippled through the crowd. He's Korean. Who is he? What is he doing here? The man surveyed the wedding tent with an expression of controlled assessment. His gaze moved across faces, decorations the Kakadis had made, and then stopped. On her. His eyes met hers across 50 feet of crowded compound. And something in his expression shifted. Something that might have been recognition. Something that might have been relief. He walked toward her. Not hurried. Not slow. But with the inevitability of a force that could not be stopped. The crowd parted instinctively. Whispers exploded in his wake. Who is he? Does he know someone here? Why is he walking toward Adiz? He stopped directly in front of her. Close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something clean and expensive and utterly unfamiliar. Close enough that she could see the slight tension in his jaw. Close enough that she could read something in his eyes that no one else in this tent could possibly understand. His lips parted, and in a voice like silk over steel he spoke. Darling. The champagne flute slipped from Adiz's fingers. It shattered against the ground in the silence that followed. No one moved. No one breathed. And Adiz Nwosu, the woman they had just finished pitying, stood frozen before a man whose name she had not spoken in nearly 5 years. Cha Hyun-woo, how are you here? The question screamed through her mind. But her lips formed no words. She simply stared at the ghost standing before her, wondering if she had finally lost her mind. Earlier that year, Seoul, South Korea. The boardroom of Cha Industries occupied the entire top floor of the tallest building in Gangnam. Cha Hyun-woo sat at the head of a mahogany table that could seat 30, though today only 5 chairs were occupied. His executives spoke in measured tones about quarterly projections, market expansion, the acquisition of a struggling tech company in Singapore. He heard none of it. His eyes remained fixed on a photograph on his phone, hidden beneath the table where no one could see. It showed a woman standing outside a bakery. The sign above the door read, Ada's Delights, in elegant script. She was smiling at someone off camera, laughing, living her life as if the past had never happened. Mr. Cha. He looked up. His chief financial officer was staring at him expectantly. I apologize. You were saying? The Singapore acquisition. Do we proceed? Yes. He returned his attention to the phone, to the photograph, to the woman whose face had haunted him for nearly 5 years. The meeting ended without his conscious participation. His executives filed out, glancing at each other with confusion. Their CEO had seemed distracted for months now, absent in ways they couldn't explain, present in body but not in spirit. Alone in the boardroom, Hyun-woo allowed himself to look at the photograph again. Adiz Nwosu. He had met her in London 5 years ago. She had been attending a culinary school. He had been there for business, a property acquisition that had ultimately fallen through. Their paths had crossed in a cafe near Hyde Park. She had been sitting alone, reading a cookbook, so absorbed that she hadn't noticed the rain soaking through her jacket. He had offered her his umbrella. She had looked up with those expressive eyes. And something inside him had shifted permanently. What followed had been the most confusing, frustrating, wonderful 6 months of his life. They were opposites in every conceivable way. She was warm where he was cold, open where he was closed. She laughed easily, spoke freely, wore her emotions where anyone could see them. He had been taught from childhood to conceal, control, present nothing that could be used against him. And yet, something about her had broken through. Something about her laughter, her optimism, her refusal to be intimidated by his wealth or his silence had made him feel, for the first time in his adult life, that perhaps vulnerability wasn't weakness. Perhaps connection didn't require control. Perhaps love was possible. And then came the misunderstanding that destroyed everything. A photograph, a lie, words spoken in anger that could never be taken back. She had returned to Nigeria without explanation. He had let her go, convinced she had chosen to leave him. 5 years later, he had learned the truth, and the truth had sent him across oceans to find her. His assistant knocked on the boardroom door. "Mr. Cha, your flight to Lagos is scheduled for tomorrow morning." He placed his phone face down on the table. "Move it to tonight." "Sir, I've waited long enough." The wedding tent had descended into chaos. Whispers swirled like a storm around Adiz and the mysterious Korean man standing before her. Phones were emerging from purses and pockets. Cameras were being aimed. Her aunties were frozen in positions of absolute shock. Adiz found her voice. "What are you doing here?" The words came out barely above a whisper. Hyun-woo's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes softened. Something that might have been apology. "I came to find you. After 5 years? After learning the truth." She didn't understand. Couldn't process what he was saying. The last time she had seen this man, he had accused her of something unforgivable. Had looked at her with eyes full of cold contempt. Had told her that he never wanted to see her face again. And now he was standing in her uncle's compound, in the middle of her cousin's wedding, calling her darling. "Adiz?" Her mother appeared at her elbow, face cycling through confusion, curiosity, and something that looked almost like hope. "Who is this man?" Hyun-woo turned to Chidinma. He bowed slightly, a gesture of Korean respect that seemed entirely out of place in a Lagos wedding tent. "Forgive my intrusion. My name is Cha Hyun-woo. I am a friend of your daughter." "Friend?" Chidinma's eyebrows rose nearly to her hairline. "I was not aware Adiz had Korean friends. We met several years ago, in London." The crowd had pressed closer now. Everyone wanted to hear. Everyone wanted to understand. "Mama, can we please discuss this later?" Adiz's voice trembled. We need to. "Why would you want to discuss this later?" Auntie Obiageli pushed through the crowd, her face alight with sudden interest. "If this man came all the way from Korea to see you, surely there's something to discuss now." "Yes," another auntie chimed in. "Why would a Korean billionaire know our Adiz?" The word billionaire spread through the crowd like wildfire. "Billionaire. He's a billionaire. Did you hear? Korean billionaire. For Adiz?" Adiz felt the ground tilting beneath her feet. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. 5 years of silence. 5 years of trying to forget. 5 years of building a life that didn't include the memory of his hands, his voice, the way he had looked at her like she was the only person in any room. And now he was here. Now he was standing before her entire family, drawing attention she had never wanted, claiming connection to a history she had buried. "Please." She looked at Hyun-woo directly. "I don't know why you came, but you need to leave." Something flickered in his eyes. Hurt maybe, or understanding. "I need to speak with you." "There's nothing to say. There's everything to say." His voice remained steady, but she could hear the undercurrent of desperation. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. And if I refuse? Then I'll wait. He met her gaze without flinching. "I've waited 5 years. I can wait longer." The sincerity in his voice cut through her defenses. She had forgotten this about him. His patience, his certainty, the way he made decisions and stuck with them regardless of obstacles. "Adiz." Her mother's voice was uncharacteristically gentle. "Perhaps you should speak with the man." She turned to find her mother's expression transformed. The disappointment was gone. The judgment was gone. In its place was something that looked almost like wonder. Her daughter, her unmarried, pitted, problematic daughter, had somehow captured the attention of a Korean billionaire. "I'll handle the guests," Chidinma continued. "You two can use your uncle's study." Adiz wanted to refuse, wanted to send him away and return to her quiet corner of humiliation. But Hyun-woo was watching her with those calm, patient eyes. And despite everything, despite the pain and the anger and the years of silence, some part of her still wanted to know. Why had he come? What truth had he learned? And why was he looking at her like she was something precious he had lost? 5 minutes, she said finally. He nodded. She turned and walked toward the house, hyper-aware of his footsteps following behind her. The crowd parted to let them pass. and the whispers that followed them were no longer filled with pity. The study was dark and quiet. Adiz closed the door behind them and leaned against it, arms crossed, heart hammering. Hyunwoo stood near the window, silhouetted against the afternoon light. Neither spoke for a long moment. "You look well." His voice broke the silence. "You came halfway around the world to tell me I look well?" "I came halfway around the world to apologize." The word hung in the air. Apologize. In 5 years, she had imagined many scenarios for their potential reunion. Had rehearsed speeches of anger and recrimination. Had practiced the cutting remarks she would deliver if she ever saw his face again. She had never imagined him apologizing. For what? Her voice sounded colder than she intended. For what exactly? Hyunwoo turned to face her. In the dim light of the study, his composure seemed to falter for the first time. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the careful control he was maintaining. "For believing what I was shown instead of believing you. You'll have to be more specific." "The photographs." He spoke the words like they physically hurt. "Of you and the man in the restaurant. The ones my stepmother arranged to have taken." Adiz felt the blood drain from her face. "Your stepmother? She hired someone to follow you, to manufacture evidence that you were unfaithful, to convince me that you were only interested in my money." He paused. "And I believed her, because believing her was easier than trusting you." The room seemed to spin. She remembered those final days in London, remembered his sudden coldness after months of growing closeness, remembered the confusion and the pain of being pushed away without explanation, remembered asking what she had done wrong and receiving only silence. She had convinced herself he had simply lost interest, had told herself that men like him didn't end up with women like her, had buried the hurt so deep that she had almost convinced herself it didn't exist. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I only learned the truth 6 months ago." Hyunwoo's voice remained steady, but his hands were clenched at his sides. "My stepmother is dying. Cancer." In her final weeks, she began confessing things she had done over the years. Manipulations. Lies. "She told me about the photographs. About the man she paid to approach you in public. About the story she crafted. To make me believe you were using me." Adiz couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The man in the restaurant, the stranger who had appeared out of nowhere, insisted on sitting at her table, put his arm around her when she was too surprised to react. She had pushed him away immediately, had been confused and slightly frightened, had never understood why a random man would approach her so aggressively. Now she understood. "You thought I was cheating on you. I thought you had never cared about me at all." His voice cracked slightly on the final word. "I thought everything we shared was a performance, a way to access my money, my position. So you said nothing." The anger was building now, mixing with old pain. "You just pushed me away, made me feel like I had imagined everything between us, made me question my own sanity." "I know. Do you?" She stepped away from the door, advancing toward him. "Do you have any idea what those last weeks were like? Trying to understand what I had done wrong? Replaying every conversation, every moment, trying to figure out why you suddenly looked at me like I was a stranger. Adiz. And then you told me to leave." Tears were threatening now, but she refused to let them fall. "You told me you never wanted to see me again. After everything. After I had started to believe that maybe... She stopped herself. Some words were too dangerous to speak. Hyunwoo stood perfectly still, absorbing her anger. He didn't defend himself, didn't make excuses, simply stood there and let her rage wash over him. "I was wrong," he said finally. "I was a coward who chose suspicion over trust. I destroyed something precious because I was afraid of being vulnerable." Pretty words. The truth. "And what do you want from me now?" She spread her arms. "Forgiveness? A second chance? You want me to forget 5 years of pain because your dying stepmother finally decided to tell the truth? I want nothing you aren't willing to give." His response surprised her. "I came here because I needed you to know the truth, because the thought of you believing forever that I simply stopped caring." He paused, searching for words. "I couldn't live with that. Even if you hate me, even if you never want to see me again. I needed you to know that it wasn't real." The coldness. The rejection. None of it was real. Adiz stared at him. At this man she had loved so desperately. At this man who had destroyed her without knowing why. At this man who had crossed oceans and continents to apologize for a wound he hadn't known he'd inflicted. I don't know what you expect me to say. Say whatever you need to say. He moved toward the door. I have a hotel in Victoria Island. The Eco-Atlantic Suite. I'll be there for 2 weeks. If you decide you want to talk, really talk, I'll be waiting. He paused with his hand on the doorknob. But if you decide you never want to see me again, his voice dropped. I'll understand. And I'll respect your wishes. He opened the door. The noise of the wedding filtered in. Distant music. Laughter. Celebration. Hyun-woo. He turned back. Adiz looked at him. Really looked at him. For the first time since his arrival. He seemed older than she remembered. Tired in ways that had nothing to do with jet lag. And in his eyes, she saw something she hadn't expected. Fear. He was afraid of her answer. 5 years, she said quietly. I spent 5 years convincing myself I was foolish to have loved you. Telling myself that men like you don't really want women like me. Building walls so high that no one could ever hurt me the way you did. He said nothing. Waited. And now you show up at my cousin's wedding, call me darling in front of my entire family, and expect me to just... What? Pretend it didn't happen? Fall back into your arms. I expect nothing. Good. She lifted her chin. Because I have nothing to give you. The words hung between them. Final. Absolute. Hyun-woo nodded once. Then I'll trouble you no further. He stepped through the doorway, and Adiz watched him go, wondering why her chest felt like it was being torn apart. The rest of the wedding passed in a blur. Adiz smiled when she was supposed to smile, answered questions with vague non-answers, pretended not to notice the speculation swirling around her. But inside she was drowning. 5 years. 5 years of buried feelings, suddenly unearthed. 5 years of carefully constructed walls, suddenly crumbling. She had convinced herself she was over him. Had convinced herself that the love she once felt had been a fantasy, a product of youth and naivety and too many romantic movies. But seeing him today, hearing him speak, watching him walk away with acceptance in his eyes, she wasn't over him. She had never been over him. And that terrified her more than anything. Adiz. Ngozi appeared beside her as the guests began departing. Are you okay? You've seemed distracted since. She gestured vaguely. Since the Korean man left. I'm fine. You're not fine. Ngozi pulled her aside. Who was he? Really? Adiz looked at her cousin. At this woman who had just married. Who had just begun a new chapter. Who couldn't possibly understand what it felt like to have old chapters reopen without warning. Someone from my past. Someone important? Once. Ngozi studied her face. You loved him. It wasn't a question. I thought I did. And now? Adiz had no answer. So she simply shook her head and returned to helping clean up the celebration that everyone else had enjoyed. 3 days later, Adiz stood in her bakery kitchen at 4 a.m. She couldn't sleep. Hadn't slept properly since the wedding. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, heard his voice, felt the ghost of a touch that had haunted her for 5 years. The dough beneath her hands was overworked, ruined. She threw it in the trash and started again. The bakery had been her salvation after London. After she returned to Lagos with a broken heart and no explanation for why, she had poured everything into building something that was hers alone. Something no man could take away. Something that didn't depend on love or trust or vulnerability. Ada's Delights had grown from a tiny stall in her mother's kitchen to a proper bakery with 2 locations. She had catered weddings, corporate events, high-profile parties. She had earned respect for her skill. But respect wasn't the same as happiness. And happiness, the kind she had glimpsed briefly in London, remained elusive. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I know you said you had nothing to give. But I saw your bakery this morning. The one in Ikoyi. I stood outside for an hour watching customers go in and out. Watching them taste things you created. You've built something remarkable. I always knew you would. Her hands trembled. She deleted the message without responding. but she couldn't delete the warmth that spread through her chest. He had found her bakery, had stood outside watching, had seen what she had built, and instead of feeling violated or stalked, she felt seen. The way she had felt seen in London. The way she had felt like she mattered, even when she hadn't fully believed it herself. Another message arrived. I'll stop. If this is unwanted, I'll stop. But I wanted you to know. I'm proud of you. Even if I have no right to be. She stared at the phone. At the words from a man she had sworn to forget. And slowly, carefully, her fingers began to type a response. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of messages exchanged like careful negotiations. 2 weeks of walls slowly, tentatively coming down. Adiz didn't know what she was doing, didn't know where any of this was leading, but she couldn't seem to stop. They didn't speak on the phone, didn't meet in person, but through text messages that arrived at odd hours, his schedule still running on Korean time, they began to rebuild something fragile. He told her about his life since London, the corporate battles, the family pressure to marry someone appropriate, the emptiness that had consumed him after she left. She told him about hers, the bakery, her mother's constant disappointment, the wedding where he had arrived like a supernatural intervention. They didn't discuss the future, didn't make promises, but with each message, the distance between them shrank. And then, on the 14th day, he sent a different kind of message. My time here is almost over. I return to Seoul tomorrow. But before I go, I need to see you. Just once. Please. She stared at the words. Her heart hammered. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was foolish. That she was setting herself up for more pain. That nothing good could come from reuniting with a man who lived across the world. But another part of her, the part that still ached, still hoped, still loved, whispered something different. What if this was her second chance? What if the universe was offering her something she had given up on? What if the love she had buried wasn't dead at all? Just waiting. She typed her response before she could change her mind. The beach at Elagushi. Tomorrow at sunset. His reply came immediately. I'll be there. The beach at sunset was painted in shades of gold and orange. Adiz arrived early. She stood at the edge of the water, watching waves roll in and out, rehearsing what she would say. But when she heard footsteps behind her, every rehearsed word evaporated. Hyun-woo stood a few feet away. He wasn't wearing a suit today, just simple dark trousers and a white shirt with sleeves rolled to the elbows. He looked almost ordinary, almost human, but his eyes, when they met hers, held the same intensity they always had. You came. I came. They stood in silence as the sun continued its descent. I'm scared, Adiz said finally. So am I. If we do this, if we try again. I'm not asking for that. She turned to face him. Then what are you asking for? He took a step closer. Then another, until he was near enough to touch. I'm asking for a chance to prove myself, to show you that I've changed, that I understand what I lost and will never take it for granted again. And if you can't, if we're just too different, then at least we'll know. His voice was soft. At least we won't spend another 5 years wondering what might have been. Adiz felt tears prickling her eyes. I can't move to Korea. I'm not asking you to. My life is here. My bakery. My family. I know. And you're a billionaire. People will talk. My family will have expectations. Your family. I don't care about any of that. He reached for her hand. Slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. I care about you, he said. Only you. Everything else is negotiable. The sun sank below the horizon. The sky turned from gold to pink to deepening purple. And on a beach in Lagos, two people who had been separated by lies and misunderstanding finally stood together. Not promising forever. Not pretending the past didn't exist. But willing to try. One chance, Adiz whispered. One chance, he agreed. And as darkness settled around them, he pulled her into an embrace that felt like coming home. But fate, as always, had other plans. 3 months later, Adiz stood in her bakery, staring at a newspaper headline that changed everything. Cha Industries air spotted with Nigerian woman. Family demands explanation. Below the headline was a photograph of her and Hyun-woo, taken without their knowledge, published without their consent. And next to the article was a statement from the Cha family. We do not recognize this relationship. Our son's future has been arranged since birth. He is engaged to the daughter of the Kim family, and this engagement will proceed as planned. The newspaper fell from her nerveless fingers. Engaged. He was engaged, and he had never told her. The newspaper photograph stared up at her from the bakery floor. Her own face, caught mid-laugh, looked back with an innocence that now seemed foolish. Hyun-woo's hand rested on her lower back. The intimacy was unmistakable. The betrayal felt absolute. Engaged. The word echoed through her mind like a death knell. He had held her on that beach, had whispered promises about proving himself, had spent the past 3 months showing up in ways she hadn't expected. Video calls at odd hours, surprise deliveries of Korean delicacies, a weekend trip to Abuja where they had walked through markets and talked until sunrise. And the entire time, he had been engaged to another woman. Ada, her assistant, Kayamika, appeared in the kitchen doorway. There's a man here to see you. Korean. Very intense. Of course he was here. Of course he had seen the article. Of course he had come running to explain, to justify, to spin another story that would make her doubt her own eyes. Tell him I'm not available. He says he won't leave until. Then call security. Kayamika hesitated. Ada, he looks desperate. Good. Adiz turned her back to the door and began aggressively kneading dough that didn't need kneading. She heard footsteps anyway. Heard the kitchen door swing open. Heard his voice, rough with emotion she refused to acknowledge. Let me explain. There's nothing to explain. She didn't turn around. The newspaper was very thorough. The engagement isn't real. The statement from your family seemed real enough. It was arranged when I was 22, before I even met you. I've been fighting to dissolve it for years. Her hands stilled on the dough. And you never thought to mention this? In 3 months of rebuilding trust, it never occurred to you to say, by the way, darling, I'm technically engaged to someone else? I didn't want to burden you with problems I was handling. She laughed. A bitter, broken sound. Burden me? You thought hiding an entire fiancé was protecting me? She's not my fiancé. Not in any way that matters. Finally, Adiz turned. Hyun-woo stood in the middle of her kitchen, looking more disheveled than she had ever seen him. His shirt was wrinkled. His hair was uncombed. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. Does she know that? Adiz demanded. Does the Kim family know that? Does your family? They know I've refused. Repeatedly. And yet, here we are. She gestured to the newspaper still lying on the floor. Your family making public statements. Calling our relationship something that needs to be explained. Making me look like a mistress. A scandal. A problem to be managed. That's not. Do you have any idea what this will do to me? To my business? Nigerian society isn't kind to women who are seen as homewreckers. You're not. I know I'm not. Her voice cracked. But they don't. My customers don't. My family doesn't. By tomorrow, everyone will have an opinion about the Nigerian baker who seduced a Korean billionaire away from his proper bride. Hyun-woo moved toward her. She held up a hand. Don't. He stopped. The distance between them felt like miles. I will fix this, he said quietly. I will make a public statement. I will clarify everything. It won't matter. It will. No. Adiz shook her head. It won't, because you still don't understand. You live in a world where you can make problems disappear with money and statements and power. I don't. I live in a world where reputation is everything, where whispers follow women forever, where being associated with scandal marks you as damaged goods. Then come to Korea with me. Leave all of this behind. And be what? She stared at him. Your hidden girlfriend? Your international embarrassment? The woman your family is trying to erase. My wife. The word stopped her cold. What? Marry me. He said it like it was obvious. Like it was the simplest solution in the world. If we're married, the engagement to the Kim family becomes irrelevant. My family will have to accept you. The scandal becomes a love story. A love story. Yes. You're proposing to me as a solution to a PR problem? For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? He ran a hand through his already disheveled hair. I meant that I love you, that I've loved you since London, that these past 3 months have only confirmed what I already knew, that you're the only person I want to spend my life with. The engagement was a convenient excuse to finally say what I should have said weeks ago. Adiz felt her heart cracking. Half of her wanted to fall into his arms. Half of her wanted to throw him out. You should have told me. I know. You should have trusted me with the truth. I know. Instead, you let me build hopes on a foundation that was already crumbling. I was afraid. His composure finally broke. Afraid that if you knew about the engagement, you would decide I wasn't worth the complication. Afraid that I would lose you again before I even had a chance to prove myself. So you lied by omission. Yes, the honesty was painful, but at least it was honest. I need time, Adiz said finally. I need to process this without you standing in my kitchen making everything more confusing. How much time? I don't know. Days? Weeks? I don't know. She met his eyes. But I need you to leave. Now. He stood perfectly still for a long moment. Then he nodded. I'll be at the hotel. I know. If you need anything, I'll manage. He walked toward the door, paused, turned back one final time. For what it's worth, he said softly. I meant every word. About loving you. About wanting to marry you. About fighting for us. Then he was gone. And Adiz was alone with flower-covered hands and a heart she no longer recognized. The fallout came quickly. By evening, the story had spread beyond newspapers to social media, gossip blogs, entertainment news. Korean billionaire scandal trended in Nigeria. Chindestrizaire trended in Korea. And Adiz bakery, her sanctuary, her accomplishment, her pride, became the subject of intense public scrutiny. I just saw the article. Her mother arrived unannounced, letting herself into Adiz's apartment with a key she wasn't supposed to have. Is it true? Is the man from the wedding actually engaged to someone else? Adiz sat curled on her sofa, still wearing her flour-dusted apron. It's complicated. Complicated. Chidinma sat down heavily. My daughter, involved with a man who has another woman. This is the complicated you chose. I didn't know. You didn't ask? I trusted him. Her mother was silent for a long moment. Do you love him? The question caught Adiz off guard. Her mother never asked about love. Only about security, stability, propriety. Love was a luxury in Chidinma's worldview. Pleasant if present, but never the foundation for important decisions. I don't know anymore. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. Chidinma studied her daughter's face. You look terrible. Thank you, Mama. I'm serious. You've lost weight. Your eyes are swollen. This man. Whoever he is, whatever the truth, he's destroying you. I'm fine. You keep saying that. And every time you say it, I believe you less. Adiz pulled her knees to her chest. What do you want me to say? That I made a mistake? That I should have listened to all the warnings about foreign men and impossible situations? That I'm exactly the foolish, unmarried woman everyone always said I was? I want you to tell me the truth. The gentleness in her mother's voice was unexpected. Disarming. The truth, Adiz said slowly, is that I fell in love with someone 5 years ago, and I thought I had gotten over him. And then he came back, and I realized I hadn't. And now I don't know what's real anymore. Chidinma was quiet. This is the same man from the wedding? Yes. The one who called you darling in front of everyone? Yes. And he's actually a billionaire? Yes, Mama. He's actually a billionaire. Her mother processed this information. I always thought you were too practical for dramatic love stories. So did I. And yet here we are. Chidinma reached over and took her daughter's hand. Dramatic love story and all. Adiz felt tears threatening again. What am I supposed to do? I don't know. Her mother squeezed her hand. But I know that hiding in your apartment won't solve anything. Neither will destroying yourself with worry. The bakery will survive. You've built something strong. A scandal won't destroy it unless you let it. Easy for you to say. Perhaps. Chidinma's eyes softened. But I've watched you survive things that would have broken other women. Watched you build a business from nothing. Watched you hold your head high when everyone around you was waiting for you to fall. If anyone can survive this, it's you. Adiz stared at her mother. At this woman who had spent years criticizing and pressuring and demanding. At this woman who was now offering something that felt like unconditional support. You're not going to tell me I brought this on myself? Would it help? No. Then I won't. Chidinma stood. But I will tell you this. Whatever you decide about this man, make sure it's your decision, not mine, not society's, not the newspapers, yours. She moved toward the door, paused, turned back. And Ada? For what it's worth. A man who comes to your cousin's wedding and calls you darling in front of your entire family without caring what anyone thinks. A small smile crossed her face. That's not the behavior of a man who doesn't love you. Then she was gone. And Adiz was left alone with the weight of choices she didn't know how to make. For days passed. 4 days of unanswered messages from Hyunwoo. 4 days of declining interview requests. 4 days of forcing herself to work when every instinct screamed to hide. The bakery had experienced a strange shift. Some customers avoided it, whether from judgment or simply not wanting to be associated with controversy. But others arrived specifically because of the scandal, curious about the woman at the center of the story. Your croissants are trending on Twitter, Kayamika reported during a quiet afternoon. Someone posted a photo with the caption, "If her pastry is this good." No wonder a billionaire couldn't resist. That's not exactly the publicity I wanted. Publicity is publicity. Kayamika shrugged. We've had more orders in the past 4 days than the entire previous month. People are treating my personal life like entertainment. Welcome to the modern world. Adiz retreated to the kitchen. She found solace in routine, measuring flour, proofing yeast, shaping dough into precise forms. The physical work occupied her hands while her mind wandered through memories she had tried to suppress. London, the cafe where they had first met, the umbrella he had offered without expecting anything in return. The weeks of careful conversation that had slowly revealed the man beneath the corporate exterior. She remembered the night he had told her about his father's death, about inheriting a company at 25, about the pressure of maintaining a legacy he had never asked for. She had been the first person he had ever told, the first person he had trusted, and she remembered her own confessions, the family expectations, the cultural weight, the feeling of being caught between two worlds. Nigerian enough to feel the pull of tradition, modern enough to resist it, never quite belonging to either. He had listened without judgment, had asked questions that showed genuine curiosity, had treated her culture with respect rather than exoticism. She had fallen in love with his attention as much as his presence, with the way he noticed details others missed, with the way he remembered every preference, every passing comment, every half-formed dream she had shared. And then the photographs, the sudden coldness, the accusations that had shattered everything. She had spent 5 years convincing herself it was for the best, that a relationship across such vast distances, geographical, cultural, economic, could never have worked, that she had been foolish to believe otherwise. But now he was here. Now he had explained. Now he was waiting for her answer while her entire world watched and judged. Ada, Kayamika's voice interrupted her spiraling thoughts. There's someone here, says he's from Korea, but it's not the billionaire. Someone else. Adiz's stomach dropped. Who? He says his name is Secretary Park. Says he works for the Cha family. The Cha family, not Hyunwoo. His family. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked to the front of the bakery. The man waiting near the entrance was middle-aged, impeccably dressed, with the bearing of someone accustomed to wielding authority on others' behalf. He bowed slightly when she appeared. Miss Nwosu, thank you for seeing me. I didn't agree to see anyone. I understand. But this matter is too important for messages or intermediaries. He glanced around the bakery. Perhaps we could speak privately? Whatever you need to say, you can say here. He hesitated, then reached into his jacket and withdrew an envelope. The Cha family is prepared to offer you a substantial sum in exchange for ending your relationship with Hyunwoo. The words landed like ice water. Excuse me? $5 million. American. Deposited into any account you choose. in any jurisdiction you prefer. His tone was businesslike, routine, as if he made such offers regularly. In exchange, you will agree to never contact Hyunwoo again, never speak to media about your relationship, and leave Lagos for a period of no less than 2 years to allow the situation to cool. Adiz stared at him. You're trying to buy me off. We're offering you an opportunity. He extended the envelope. More money than your bakery will earn in a lifetime. Financial security beyond anything you've imagined. All you have to do is walk away. Her hands remained at her sides. And if I refuse? Then the Cha family will be forced to pursue other avenues. His expression didn't change. We have significant resources, Miss Nwosu. We can influence business relationships, media coverage, immigration status. We can make your life difficult. You're threatening me. I'm presenting options. Anger surged through her veins. 5 years ago, this family had destroyed her relationship with manufactured lies. Now they were trying to destroy it again with money and intimidation. Get out. I would encourage you to consider. Get out. Her voice echoed through the bakery. Kayamika appeared in the kitchen doorway, eyes wide. Several customers looked up from their tables. Secretary Park remained unmoved. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was not throwing you out immediately. Adiz stepped toward him. You think you can come to my country, into my business, and threaten me? You think I'm some desperate woman who will sell her dignity for money? Miss Nwosu, my name is Adiz, and you will address me with respect or you won't address me at all. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or reassessment. $5 million is more than reasonable. I don't care if it's 50 million. I don't care if it's 500 million. I am not for sale. My feelings are not for sale. And you can tell the Cha family that if they want to threaten me, they should come do it themselves instead of sending errand boys. She pointed at the door. Now leave, before I call security, and the police, and every journalist who's been requesting interviews about this scandal. Secretary Park tucked the envelope back into his jacket. His composure remained unbroken, but there was new calculation in his eyes. You're more formidable than we anticipated. Your family anticipated wrong. He moved toward the door, paused. This isn't over, Miss Nwosu. The Cha family doesn't accept defeat easily. Neither do I. He left, and Adiz stood in her bakery, shaking with adrenaline and fury, wondering what exactly she had just set in motion. She told Hyunwoo that night, their first conversation since she had asked him to leave. They met at a quiet restaurant in Lekki, one of the few places where they might have some privacy. He had arrived first, waiting in a private room that he had apparently booked days ago, just in case, always prepared, always hoping. Secretary Park came to my bakery. His expression shifted from relief to controlled rage in an instant. What did he say? He offered me $5 million to disappear from your life. The muscle in Hyunwoo's jaw tightened. And when you refused? How do you know I refused? Because you're here. Simple. Certain. She shouldn't have found his faith comforting, but she did. He threatened me, implied your family could make my life difficult, affect my business, my immigration status, everything. Hyunwoo was already reaching for his phone. I'll handle this. Wait. He paused, looked at her. Before you handle anything, I need you to understand something. She leaned forward. I refused the money not because of you. I refused because I refused to be bought. I refused to let anyone dictate my choices. I refused because the Adiz Nwosu who left London 5 years ago might have been broken by this. But the Adiz Nwosu who built a bakery from nothing won't be intimidated by men in suits. I never doubted that. Then stop looking at me like I'm someone who needs protecting. He set down the phone. How should I look at you? Like an equal, like a partner, like someone who makes her own decisions about her own life. A long moment passed. I've spent my entire life protecting people, Hyunwoo said quietly. My family, my company, my position. The instinct is difficult to suppress. I'm not asking you to suppress it. I'm asking you to trust that I can protect myself. And if I want to protect you anyway, then do it with me, not for me. He absorbed this. You're still angry. I'm still processing. The engagement. I know. You've been trying to end it. Your family won't listen. The Kim family has political connections. Breaking the arrangement could have business implications. She listed the facts without emotion. Kayamika is very thorough with her internet research. Kayamika? My assistant. She has opinions about you. Favorable opinions? She thinks you should fight harder for love instead of making excuses about family obligations. Despite everything, a ghost of a smile crossed his face. She sounds formidable. She is. Adiz paused. And she's not wrong. The smile faded. You think I haven't fought? I think you've been fighting the wrong battle. She met his eyes. You've been trying to convince your family to accept your choice, to give you permission to love who you want. But they're never going to give you permission, Hyun-woo. They're going to keep sending men like Secretary Park until you either surrender or stop asking. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you stop asking. He was silent for a long moment. If I defy them completely, publicly, there will be consequences. For the company. For my position. For everything I've built. I know. I could lose everything. I know. And you're saying I should risk that? For us. Adiz shook her head. I'm not saying you should do anything. I'm saying you need to decide what matters most to you. Your family's approval or your own happiness. Your company or your freedom. The life they planned for you or the life you actually want. I want you. I know you believe that right now. It's not about right now. He reached across the table and took her hand. It's about always. It's about the fact that I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the day we met. It's about knowing that if I let you go again, for any reason, I'll spend the rest of my life regretting it. His thumb traced circles on her palm. But you're right. I've been fighting the wrong battle. Trying to change them instead of choosing myself. So what will you do? He was quiet. Then, whatever it takes. The following week was chaos. Hyun-woo made a public statement that sent shockwaves through Korean media. He announced his intention to dissolve the engagement to the Kim family. Cited irreconcilable differences in life vision. Made no mention of Adiz specifically, but the implication was clear. He was choosing his own path. The Cha family's response was swift and brutal. They released their own statement, expressing deep disappointment in their son's unfortunate decisions. They announced that they were considering all options regarding the future leadership of Cha Industries. The business press interpreted this as a threat of disinheritance. The entertainment press called it a billionaire love war. And somewhere in the middle, Adiz watched a man she was learning to love again sacrifice everything she had told him he might have to sacrifice. You didn't have to do this yet? She told him over video call, his face illuminated by the screen of her phone. We could have waited. Found a quieter way. There is no quiet way. He looked tired but peaceful. And waiting only gives them time to plan counterattacks. Better to strike decisively. You sound like you're talking about a business acquisition. In some ways, it is. Faint smile. I'm acquiring my freedom. The price is simply higher than usual. And the company? The board is nervous but loyal. My work has built most of our recent success. They won't remove me easily. But they could. They could. He didn't flinch from the truth. But they won't. Because I'm too valuable. And because I've spent years building relationships that transcend family politics. You planned for this. I planned for the possibility of this. Since the day I decided to find you again. The admission stunned her. You knew it might come to this? I knew that loving you would require choices. I made peace with those choices before I boarded the plane to Lagos. She didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to process the depth of planning, of sacrifice, of commitment. You're very strange, she said finally. I've been told. Most men would run from complications like this. Most men haven't met you. She felt heat rising to her cheeks. That was smooth. It was honest. His eyes softened through the screen. I know we still have things to resolve. Trust to rebuild. Wounds to heal. But I want you to know whatever happens next, I don't regret any of this. The only thing I regret is wasting 5 years we could have had together. We can't get those years back. No. But we can make the next ones count. She was quiet for a moment. When are you coming back to Lagos? Soon. There are meetings I need to handle first. Shareholders to reassure. Alliances to solidify. He paused. Will you wait for me? I've waited 5 years. What's another few weeks? It was the closest thing to a promise she could offer. And from the way his expression transformed, he understood exactly what she meant. 3 weeks later, Hyun-woo returned. He arrived without the fanfare of his first visit. No luxury vehicles, no dramatic entrances, no shocked crowds. Just a car that picked him up from the airport and delivered him to a small restaurant in Yaba where Adiz was waiting. She had chosen this place deliberately. It was her neighborhood, her territory, a place where she felt strong. He walked in wearing jeans and a simple sweater. She had never seen him in casual clothes before. He looked younger, more approachable, almost ordinary. You came. Did you think I wouldn't? I think the past month has taught me not to assume anything. They sat across from each other at a corner table. The restaurant was half empty, the lunch crowd having dispersed. How are you? She asked. Complicated question. Complicated answer? The board voted to maintain my position as CEO. My stepmother passed away last week. My father's family has declared me officially estranged. He listed these facts with unsettling calm. But I'm still standing, still fighting, still here. Your stepmother. It was expected. The cancer was aggressive. He looked at his hands. I don't know how to mourn someone who caused so much damage, who lied about you, who tried to control my entire life. You don't have to know yet. He looked up. She was dying when she confessed. I think she wanted absolution, wanted me to forgive her before she was gone. Did you? I tried. He shook his head. I'm not sure I succeeded. Adiz reached across the table, took his hands in hers. Forgiveness isn't always a single moment. Sometimes it's a process. Sometimes it takes years. Speaking from experience? Speaking from watching my own heart these past few months. She squeezed his hands. I'm still angry at you. For not telling me about the engagement. For letting me hope before I knew the full picture. I know. But I'm also starting to forgive you. Because I understand why you did it. Because I can see you're trying. Because... She trailed off. Because I love you. The words fell into the space between them. She hadn't planned to say them. Hadn't known they were ready to be spoken. But there they were. True. Undeniable. Terrifying. Hyun-woo's hands tightened around hers. Say that again. I love you. Once more. I love you, Cha Hyun-woo. Against my better judgment. Against all logic. Against everything my mother tried to teach me about protecting my heart. He was around the table before she could register movement. His arms wrapped around her. His face pressed into her hair. And she heard him whisper, in a voice rough with emotion, I have waited 5 years to hear those words. Was it worth the wait? Every second. They held each other in that half-empty restaurant, surrounded by empty plates and staring waiters, lost in a moment that felt like the end of something and the beginning of something else entirely. 6 months later, the Cha family officially withdrew their opposition. It came in the form of a formal letter, delivered by courier to Adiz's bakery. The language was stiff and ceremonial, but the message was clear. They would no longer interfere with Hyun-woo's personal decisions. Adiz suspected the change had more to do with Cha Industries' recent expansion into West African markets than any genuine change of heart. Hyun-woo had made himself indispensable, had proven that his leadership was worth more than their control. But she chose not to dwell on motivations. The result was what mattered. We should celebrate, Hyun-woo said that evening, arriving at her apartment with champagne and a mysterious smile. What exactly are we celebrating? Freedom, victory, the fact that we've somehow survived everything thrown at us. She accepted the champagne but studied his expression. You're hiding something. Am I? Your face does that thing when you're planning something. I don't have a thing. You absolutely have a thing. He laughed, a real laugh, the kind she had been hearing more often lately, and set down the champagne. I have a proposal. That's the second time you've proposed to me under strange circumstances. This one is different. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Adiz's heart stopped. Hyun-woo. Before you say anything, He opened the box to reveal a ring. Simple. Elegant. A single diamond set in a band of intertwined gold and platinum. This isn't about solving problems or managing scandals. This isn't about proving anything to anyone. He knelt before her. Actually knelt. This powerful man who ran a multinational corporation. On his knees before her. This is about wanting to spend the rest of my life with you. This is about knowing that every moment I'm not with you feels incomplete. This is about choosing you not because I have to, but because I want to. Because I can't imagine existing without you. Tears were streaming down her face. She didn't care. Adiz Nwosu. His voice was steady, but his eyes were bright with unshed tears of his own. Will you marry me? She looked at the ring, at his face, at this impossible, infuriating, devoted man who had turned her entire life upside down. Yes. The word came out as barely a whisper, but he heard. He rose and pulled her into his arms. And when his lips met hers, it was like every goodbye they had ever said being rewritten into a hello, into a promise, into a future. The wedding took place 8 months later. Not in Seoul, not in Lagos, but on a beach in Cape Verde, suspended between two continents, belonging to neither but welcoming to both. They had invited only the people who mattered. Adiz's mother stood in the front row, wearing white, her choice, a symbol of joy rather than mourning. Beside her were aunties who had spent years pitying Adiz and were now looking at her with something entirely different. Respect. Perhaps even envy. Kayamika served as maid of honor, weeping openly and complaining about her makeup between sobs. Hyunwoo's side was smaller, a handful of trusted executives. A few old friends from university who had known him before the corporate armor had fully formed. No family, a fact that might have seemed sad but instead felt like liberation. He stood at the altar in a traditional Korean hanbok modified with subtle African prints. A design Adiz had worked on with a Korean-Nigerian fashion designer she had discovered through pure serendipity, or perhaps fate. She no longer dismissed the possibility. When Adiz walked toward him, wearing white with an elaborate geli that honored her heritage, Hyunwoo's composure finally broke. Tears streamed down his face. He made no effort to hide them, and everyone present witnessed something rare. A powerful man openly, unashamedly weeping at the sight of the woman he loved. They exchanged vows in a mixture of English, Igbo, and Korean. 3 languages, 2 cultures, 1 love. I used to think I needed protection from the world, Adiz said, her voice carrying over the waves. I built walls so high that no one could hurt me, but you didn't try to climb them or tear them down. You just waited, patiently, until I was ready to open the gate myself. She reached up and touched his face. Thank you for waiting. Hyunwoo took her hands. I used to think emotions were weakness, that love was a liability, that the only way to survive was to need no one. His voice was rough with feeling. You taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's courage. That needing someone doesn't diminish you. It completes you. He raised her hands to his lips. Thank you for being patient with a fool who almost lost you twice. The officiant pronounced them married. Hyunwoo kissed his bride. And on a beach between 2 worlds, surrounded by people who had watched them struggle and fight and choose each other despite everything, Adiz and Hyunwoo began the life they had almost lost. 1 year later, the bakery expanded to Seoul. Ada's Delights opened its first international location in Gangnam, just blocks from the Cha Industries headquarters. The concept was simple. Nigerian-Korean fusion pastries, combining flavors from both cultures into something entirely new. The launch event was covered by press from 3 continents. Adiz stood beside a display of chin-chin-inspired macarons and puff-puff-flavored Korean rice cakes, giving interviews with the easy confidence of someone who had survived far worse than media scrutiny. How does it feel to be called a rags-to-riches story? One reporter asked. I wouldn't call it that. Adiz smiled. I had a successful business before I ever met my husband. This expansion is a partnership, not a rescue. And what would you say to young women who might see your story as proof that finding a rich husband is the path to success? I would say that my husband is not the source of my success. He's my partner in it. I built my first bakery with my own hands. I earned my reputation through my own work. What I found in him wasn't security or status. It was love. And love without self-respect is just another form of prison. The reporter nodded, clearly impressed. One final question. Any plans for the future? Adiz glanced across the room, where Hyunwoo was deep in conversation with a group of Korean food critics. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up and smiled. The future is already here, she said. I'm just grateful to be living it. Later that night, after the guests had departed and the bakery had closed, Adiz and Hyunwoo stood alone in the empty space. You were magnificent today, he said, pulling her into his arms. I learned from the best. Flattery won't get you anywhere. It's gotten me this far. He laughed and kissed her forehead. Do you remember the wedding? He asked quietly. Your cousin's wedding? The one I crashed. How could I forget? You ruined my carefully planned anonymity. I saved you from dying of public humiliation. I was handling it. You were breaking. She couldn't deny it. What made you come that day? Why then, after 5 years? He was quiet for a moment. I had been tracking you for months, ever since my stepmother's confession. But I couldn't figure out how to approach you, how to explain, how to apologize for what I had done. So you chose maximum drama. I chose desperation. He met her eyes. I heard about the wedding from someone who works with your uncle's company. Heard there would be family gathered. Heard that you would be there alone, probably suffering through another round of judgment about your unmarried status. He paused. I couldn't let another moment pass. Couldn't let you spend one more second believing that no one wanted you, that you weren't worth choosing, that you would die alone. So you walked into a Nigerian wedding, uninvited, and called me darling in front of my entire family. Yes, that's insane. I know. That's the most romantic thing anyone has ever done for me. I know. She laughed and kissed him, properly, deeply, with all the love she had once been afraid to feel. I'm glad you came, she whispered against his lips. So am I. They stood in the empty bakery as Seoul glittered through the windows. Two people who had crossed oceans and defied families, and weathered scandals to find their way back to each other. What do we do now? She asked. Now? He smiled. Now we live, together, for as long as we're given. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was better. It was real. Epilogue, 5 years later. The compound in Victoria Island was decorated for celebration again. Not a wedding this time, a christening. Adiz stood in the center of the same tent where she had once been publicly humiliated, holding her daughter in her arms. The baby was 3 months old, with her father's calm eyes and her mother's dimpled smile. They had named her Sujin Chinasa, a Korean first name meaning treasured jewel, a Nigerian middle name meaning God answers, a bridge between two worlds just like her parents. She has your stubbornness? Hyunwoo murmured, appearing at her side. And your silence. She stares at people like she's evaluating their life choices. A useful skill. Adiz looked around the tent. Her mother was there, doting on her granddaughter with an enthusiasm that bordered on concerning. Her aunties were there. Their pity transformed into pride. Their judgment softened into grudging admiration. Even Secretary Park was there, retired now and surprisingly cordial since the birth. The Cha family had gradually thawed over the years. Not into warmth exactly, but into acceptance. Hyunwoo's continued success had proven that he didn't need their approval to thrive. And Adiz's own accomplishments, the growing bakery empire, the cookbook, the cultural foundation she had established, had demonstrated that she was no gold digger. She was a partner, an equal, a force. Do you remember what you said to me that day? She asked Hyunwoo quietly. At the wedding? The first word. Darling. Why that word? Of all the things you could have said. He considered the question. Because it was true. Because you were dear to me. Because I wanted everyone in that tent to know that you belonged to someone. That you were wanted. That the woman they were pitying was precious beyond measure. Tears pricked her eyes. Even after years of marriage, he could still undo her with a few words. They laughed at me that day, she said. Made me feel like nothing, like a failure. And now, she looked around the tent again, at the faces that had once judged her, at the life she had built against all odds, at the husband beside her and the daughter in her arms. And now I know better, she smiled. They can laugh all they want. I won. Not by their rules. By mine. Hyun-woo pulled her close, careful not to disturb the sleeping baby. I love you, Adiz Nwosu-cha. I love you too. Even when you crash my cousin's wedding. It worked out well. It did. She leaned into him, surrounded by family and friends and the life they had chosen together. Outside, Lagos hummed with its endless energy. Inside, a baby slept peacefully in her mother's arms. And somewhere between continents, between cultures, between all the expectations they had defied, two hearts beat as one. Finally, completely, forever. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more emotional romance stories. Leave a comment telling us your favorite moment, and we'll see you in the next video.